was a small town girl just trying to survive, married far too young without a hope or dream inside, locked in a prison not of her own making, to someone who never gave, just did all the taking. She needed a prince to pull her from that crumbling tower, a knight in shining armor in her darkest hour, someone to free her from her life in chains, someone strong enough to carry her away someday. Then she met someone, they both shared a stage, but she was still too scared, so Lucy ran away. As fate would have it, later on that year, fate brought him back around, but she was still so full of fear. She needed a prince to pull her from that crumbling tower, a knight in shining armor in her darkest hour, someone to free her from her life in chains, someone strong enough to carry her away someday. That someday never came, not that he didn't try, she just loved him way too much to let him ruin his life. But what he gave to her late one Memphis night became the strength she needed to survive. He was that prince that pulled her from that crumbling tower, a knight in shining armor in her darkest hour, someone who freed her from her life in chains, someone strong enough to carry her away. Elvis gave her Desiree. Elvis gave her, oh how hard he tried to save her. Elvis gave her Desiree, making love all night and day. They swore their love would stay. Elvis gave her Desiree.
A lot of the subscribers I'm kind of putting to work investigating John Wayne being there, and they're finding these news articles and stuff of John Wayne being in Alexandria, stuff that you researched on yourself about this. So there's quite a few people that have been sending me a lot of different stuff, and that's what I was just trying to pull up a few things, but I'm gonna stop sharing real quick.
I don't think it's any doubt that John Wayne filmed that movie in Alexandria. I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah, but this is what a lot of people that are the naysayers, you know all about them. You like going in, but the naysayers are like, how could she have known Elvis? How could she have been a lover of Elvis and have a child? And then all of a sudden meets John Wayne and all this stuff. Well, first off, this is 1957, 58, 59. And it's not like, places like Alexandria didn't exist for movie sets for people to come and filming. So I just what I tell people is when I'm reading the book, hey, here's a date, here's a radio station, like the Mr. Melton, the guy that owned the radio station in Alexandria, when she went up there to move in with her sister and have Desiree, the baby. Well, people are like trying to find Mr. Melton in the radio station because it's for them, the more they can find that's tangible, the more they want to believe. They say Thomas had to touch Christ's side in Christianity. Jesus said, you know, because you've seen, you believe. Blessed are those that have not seen, but yet still believe. That being said, we're not talking about Jesus. We're talking about something that a lot of people have a problem wrapping their head around, and they're finding proof themselves of these places, of Lucy's existence. You know.
Hey, it's interesting you mentioned Jesus, and I was just thinking that, remember I told you Desiree did her DNA and the ancestry and all that, and it turned
Yes.
out she's got no father at all. She had no paternal match. I guess she was a virgin birth, like Jesus himself, the king, must have been had magical powers because she's probably the only one in history that has no paternal match on that. So that's interesting. I had an opening statement too.
Well,
I'm
take your time. You can,
all
if
right.
you got to do it.
This opening statement, because I wrote some paranormal books. I don't know if you're into that or your audience, but I wrote a book called Childlight, children who come back and talk to their parents from the beyond, mothers that are so crushed that they lost a child and then the child contacts them. I wrote a whole book about that, 56 cases. So kind of paranormal is something I've come across. And today, while I was working out, I was listening to sports radio, and another station bled over from California or Mexico, and it was Elvis singing Kentucky Rain. Can you believe that? This is just this afternoon. And Kentucky Rain was his powerfully emotional story about searching for a
Yes.
woman that he can't find, a woman he loves and he lost. Now, all the naysayers, who in Elvis's life did he ever lose? What girlfriend or woman did he ever lose except one woman who hid from him for 10 years? And that was Lucy. And that song must have really resonated. You know who wrote Kentucky Rain? You may even know.
Yeah. Ronnie Millsap. No.
Ronnie Millsap played on it with
Yeah.
Elvis, and Eddie Rabbitt wrote it.
Eddie. Yes.
But they gave it to Elvis and he grabbed it and he sings so emotionally. That's what my opening statement is. Anybody reading along with the book, if you want to get how Elvis felt when he lost Lucy for that decade, uh, just play that song and listen to it with new ears. Now, he recorded that after he got in contact with her again, but then she tried to escape him again. So it resonated with him, Kentucky Rain, and he really pours his heart out in that song. You can tell that there was some meaning. And again, I defy the naysayers to tell me, who did Elvis lose in his whole life that he didn't know where they were or couldn't find them? One woman in his whole life that was close to him that he had lost, and it was him and a daughter. So that song, I suggest all the readers play Kentucky Rain. You probably have sang it. I was listening to your videos during the delay, man. You got a great voice. You did Blue Christmas and that song. Kristen, your wife?
Yes.
Wow, beautiful lady, beautiful voice. That song about the wine, I didn't even know what that was. Never
Yeah.
even heard of
Muscadine.
that. What is it?
Muscadine. It's a southern
Muscadine.
grape.
Yeah, that was beautiful, beautiful video. I suggest everybody listen to that. Great song and a
Thank you.
beautiful wife you have. Tell her I said that.
I will.
And there's a part in the video where her bracelet falls. You may not even have noticed that and seen it and recorded it. See, you don't even know.
I don't think
She's
so.
kind
I
of
think that's
reaching out for you, and a couple of her bracelets fall down her wrists in the
okay.
video. That to me, that was a moving moment. My author's eye looking at that video and seeing her bracelet. I don't know why that touched me. I guess I'm in psychic world today. But
Well, I like it. And the funny thing is, the guy that directed and produced that with my wife and I was Pope John Paul's videographer. So he also produced Nash Bridges, the TV show.
Oh,
So the
I
guy,
love Nash Bridges. Don Johnson. I'm dressed like Don
yes, yeah,
Johnson.
you are.
That's my
Yeah.
Halloween outfit for the last 30 years, Miami Vice. Big
That's great.
hero. Wow, what a small world.
Yeah, his name was Julian Chosnocki, and yeah, so he probably saw that. Now we didn't because we're just singing and we all that other stuff, but he probably captured it,
You didn't
and
even
that's why I
notice
made it.
it to this day. You're
I'll
going
have
to
to
have to
look. I
go
have to
back
watch.
and all your fans and the people are going to have to go back, watch the moment where her bracelets fall. I don't know why that struck me as very romantic, but the camera was focused on it, almost like it was planned,
Hmm.
but I bet
Well,
it wasn't. She
I've
wears a
got the
lot of jewelry, your wife.
yes.
She had
Yep.
like, I don't know, 5, 6 bracelets on. That's
There's
cool.
never too much jewelry. You
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
I think we
Exactly.
I think we went shopping for a straight week before the video. That's kind of a sore point. My budget went really up because she wanted to shop for more clothes and more jewelry. But you got to do it when you're doing a video. You got to do it up big.
And I bet she planned those bracelets for a long time, and you have no idea what they mean to this day. She'll get on
Probably.
and tell us exactly what they mean.
You're right. You're right about that.
Oh, and
So
the car that you still got the Mustang?
now that's not my car. Now I grew up with my first 30 cars or 31 cars were all 1970 and older cars. Even when in the 90s, when I was a teenager, I
Yeah.
had all, but that wasn't a car that I owned. That's something we rented.
Oh, you rented. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
kind of a car guy. I have old cars too. I can't, every time I go to buy a new car, I go to the dealership and I come back with a 68 Camaro found in the back used car lot, you
that's
know.
great.
And people yell at me, you were supposed to get a new car. Now you got another junker, but I'm gravitated to that. But yeah, that's a very beautiful, well done video, and you sing beautifully.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Um, like I said, I always tell people on my channel, I mean, that I grew up loving Elvis and he's the reason I sing, and so, yeah, and singing emotionally. That's the thing too. Elvis was he emoted so well, like you talk in Kentucky Rain.
Did you ever
That's what.
do, did you ever do a tribute and dress
Oh
up
yeah.
like him?
I didn't do the dressing up like him because I don't look like Elvis. Now, there was a time in 1997 in Nashville when I just got to town that I took part in a talent contest, and it was the winner got to sing with the Jordanaires and go on the road. And so I was an Elvis fan, so I had a green suit jacket and I was doing Jailhouse Rock and all this other stuff. And I got to the finals. It was me and a guy named Dwayne Adams, a big guy that sang "This Time, Lord, You Gave Me," the mountain song. He has a big voice, just like a great singer. And I thought everybody was already calling me Little Elvis in California before I moved to Tennessee. They were starting to call me Little Elvis at the Nashville Palace and Nashville Nightlife. And I thought, do I want to be known as an imitator? And so there in the finals, instead of singing an Elvis song, I sang Garth Brooks to Dance. And so I lost. And I got second place. And I got $2,000. And I didn't go on the road with the Jordanaires because maybe
Why
I
did
would have
you,
won. Maybe
wait, 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 my author. Why did you sing a Garth Brooks song at an Elvis
I
event?
wanted to lose. I wanted to lose. I mean, the first song I sang was Heartbreak Hotel, then Jailhouse Rock, and then I sang How Great Thou Art to get into the finals. But at that point in time, I was living in my car, a 1965 Chrysler Imperial. I was sleeping at the KOA campground. I'd been in
Why did you
Nashville.
want to lose?
I didn't want to. I didn't want to go on the road. I didn't want to be the Elvis imitator.
Oh, okay.
That was why. I was winning talent contests, singing country songs, and I had a slip.
Sabotaged your own career.
Oh well,
Wow.
I did for that part, but I mean the thing is, I thought someday down the road, if I wanted to go to Las Vegas and be an Elvis imitator, I would have that opportunity probably if I got plastic surgery. But the big thing
I
is
know
I was already
Elvis's
winning.
look. Elvis's look is so iconic. Almost anybody. There, I think in Las Vegas they have the 1,000 Elvises parachuting. You know
Hmm.
that? Or 100 Elvises are parachuting out of planes. And they all look like Elvis. Pretty easy. His look was so dramatic and iconic. But anyway, we're getting way off the subject. But I was just listening to your music, watching your videos, so I was geeked.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And that's just it's the truth of the matter. I love Elvis so much, obviously, but I just didn't want to. I didn't want to be
I
known.
understand. I never did another rock and roll book, and they wanted me to. after Elvis, after Are You Lonesome Tonight was an international bestseller. They wanted
Mm-hmm.
me to do John Lennon or a Beatles or Bruce Springsteen or somebody. And I said, after I do Elvis, everybody else is, what else is there? Right? So I
Yeah.
understand what you're doing. I wanted to move on to mafia guys and serial killers like your father. That's kind of
Oh
a
my
joke,
God.
but we discussed that, and so
That's
I wanted to move on because been there, done that. Like Jim Morrison said about being on Ed Sullivan when they banned him. We
mm-hmm.
did Ed Sullivan, baby. So I did my music book. Nothing will ever top it.
So, hey, you made me think of something. Let me know if you can hear this. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen just real quick here. And maybe I edit this out. Maybe I don't. We'll find out. Let me see here. Share screen. All right. You can see my whole desktop. It's wonderful. All right. So you asked me about Elvis and me singing Elvis songs. And I don't think you've heard me sing anything. So I'll see
Whoa, look at
if this,
Kristen there.
I know she's a hottie.
Lucky guy, huh?
Can you hear that?
Uh, no.
You can. Okay. Then there's no point in me playing that then. Let me go and click out of
No
that and get
offense to you. You're a handsome guy, but man, Kristen looking good in that picture, right?
Oh yeah,
Is
she's
she
beautiful.
watching?
But she's not because we're not live right now. I'm just
Oh yeah,
recording.
but she will.
She will. Yeah.
Yeah. She's tall. How tall is she?
She's 5'7".
Yeah, that's tall for,
It it
yeah, good.
is.
Good for you. No
Well, that's it.
offense, right?
No
Complimenting
offense.
her. Okay.
She's the better half of me by far.
Yeah.
She makes me look better because I'm next to her.
Yeah. That's a
But
nice picture.
but I'll tell you what though. I mean, she's a sweet woman. I fell in love with her because she had a heart, and that's. I mean, yeah, she's pretty and all, but I'm a singer. I've had lots of pretty people out there. I think she's the most beautiful person I've ever been with. In all honesty, how I feel. But I wasn't with her for her looks or even her musical talent. It was her heart was so pure,
Wow.
and
Well, she
and I
has it all.
yeah.
And
So
magical bracelets
yes, magical bracelets. Well, I'll
that
have to look at that
fall
one.
that fall on cue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll tell you where we're at. You kind of did a couple little spoilers about Elvis searching for 10 years. I think that we're only at 1958. We're to the part where she gave birth to Desiree. The nurse was suspicious and tried to say, should we put Elvis down as the father, any relation? And so she obviously had ran away from Monroe, and she went to Colorado, almost died out there. The guy that rescued her actually died down the road, a mile down the road. Tragedy. Went back to live with her mom because her mom was sick and maybe dying. Had the baby, and we're pretty much maybe 3 months after Lucy gave birth to Desiree. That's kind of where we're at in the story. We've done 4 or 5 different readings. And then she met John Wayne, got in a car in a cab. That's as far as we've gotten with the story. I can tell you probably looked at the comments a lot this week, or
I
no?
looked at yeah, I looked at the comments of the show we did. I didn't know you were continuing without me during the week, but I did notice a funny thing. A ZZ Top song comes to mind that when I put on a suit jacket and dolled up a little more because I knew you were
Uh-huh.
going to use it raw, suddenly 99% of the people are on my side just because I'm dressed better. I'm a smart dressed man. And now they believe me. When I came on before without the suit jacket, everybody was questioning me. So, it reminds
That's
me
part of
of
it.
remember the movie Being There with Peter Sellers? He became president of the United States. He was a gardener who was mentally challenged just because he
Mm-hmm.
had a nice suit he inherited from his boss. He went all the way to be president. So that's kind of ironic, but
It helps a little bit, but I'll tell you what. In between our conversations every week, I release about 5 videos. So I'm reading the
yeah.
book. I'm also providing research of what I found, what the other subscribers send me in emails to kind of have background evidence, proof that what you're saying in these places did happen. And so that goes a long way for people because there's still some people that think I'm out of my mind to be sharing this book. and they're like, "There's no way this happened." George Klein was with Elvis every single day, or Charlie Hodge was with Elvis every.
Yeah.
Guess what? George Klein and was not with Elvis in 53, 54, 55, 56. Charlie Hodge was not with Elvis until 58, really. So he has no idea. They would have no idea about this girl, Lucy, who swore Elvis to privacy so she didn't get killed by her abusive husband. And Elvis. So there's a lot of reasoning, in my
And
opinion.
Elvis didn't trust those guys. There's so much now, and he had a reason not to trust them. His best friends, his Memphis Mafia, most of them backstabbed him. He didn't trust them, and they talked a lot about not trusting. She was paranoid that he'd tell one of them. Plus, nobody knew what they were doing as teenagers when he was mowing his sister's lawn and she was flirting with him or looking at the handsome, probably had his shirt off and mowing the lawn. That story's as old as time.
Yeah, it is. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of Elvis fans that haven't heard that Elvis mowed grass. Now, that's part of what I've been doing. I've been bringing forth some stuff from different biographies. Like here's one from Jerry Hopkins, his biography, Elvis. He mentioned that Elvis went out and played in between sets of a country western band at the Eagle's Nest, that he played with just his guitar. It either got forgotten in history, because that's where everybody was saying, no, Elvis didn't play just with his guitar. Scotty and Bill didn't get with him until late 54. But the truth is, there's biographers that have put out there that Elvis did. Not just your book, Are You Lonesome Tonight, but Jerry Hopkins mentioned that Elvis played acoustically in between a country western band at the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah. Remember I said there are 1,000, there are like hundreds of incidents in the book where everybody says one thing, and then finally someone says, no, that's true. I saw him on that flatbed. I saw him play there. He mowed grass. I think you told me last week his dad bought him the lawnmower so he'd have a business. I mean, every Southern boy mowed. I bet you mowed grass at one time for money. Did you ever mow grass? I did in North Carolina. I mowed grass.
I wasn't young, but I did a couple times, and I was like, this is horrible. I'm not doing it anymore.
I hated it too, but the first money I ever made in my life was 50-cent piece for mowing a neighbor's grass when I was like 10 years old. And I thought it was the most fabulous thing, a shiny half, silver 50-cent piece for mowing a neighbor's grass. Everybody mowed grass.
So this is for your listeners and for you. So this is from a biography. The summer of Elvis's freshman year of high school, his dad, Vernon, bought him a push lawnmower. So 19, whatever that would be, 51, 50. With his mower, him and a couple buddies, Buzzy Forbes, Farley Guy, and Paul Doer, started a lawn business. They charged $4 per yard. So Elvis Presley cut lawns, and that's what you talked about, is that he cut Lucy's sister's lawn. And that's where she knew Elvis from. It makes total sense that Elvis would come back by. Remember, I cut your lawn? I'm singing tonight. Can you want to come see me? People just want to doubt that, but to me, it makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And Lucy's sister was not much older than her, and she was also very beautiful. So Elvis liked that gig. They charged $4 back in the 50s. I only got 50 cents in the 60s.
$4 a yard.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
$4 a yard, yeah.
He must have had Colonel Parker negotiating his lawn mowing business, because that's a lot more than I got. And the yards were big back then in North Carolina. Man.
It was Elvis and his couple buddies, I think. And so if there's 4 people doing the yard, they're probably getting $1 each. But still, that's still quite a bit of money. But if you thought about it, back in those days, you'd make $30 to $40 a week is what you'd make. So if you can mow 5-6 yards and get $1 each, it's only $5 or $6. So you would have to really. But anyways, it didn't last forever, because he went to be an usher at the movie theater and a few other things.
I bet the 4 guys mowed different lawns.
Maybe.
I don't think anybody's paying $4 to kids to mow their lawn in 1953. $4 was a lot of money in 1953.
You know what it could have been? It could have been $4 per month, $1 per week.
Maybe
that would make sense. I'm going to come back and mow it every week, because that's how I have my yard mowed every week. So, but anyways,
I got a rock lawn here in Arizona. Hey, meanwhile, a beautiful sunset out my window.
Wow.
Arizona sunsets are the best, but I'm
I
in
know
the
what they look
dark
like.
behind me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we're on the
So
lawn mowering again. So
so
what's
similar.
so Desiree's now born, and I figured out the Randolph came from the nearby Air Force Base.
Yes.
I talked to Desiree after I did the show, and she reminded me it was Randolph Air Force Base, and there was no Randolph Presley. And I
No.
forgot about the nurse wondering if it was Elvis. The nurse he
Yes.
mentioned, is it Elvis? And Lucy probably was mortified.
So here's what probably happened. Now, once again, Lucy wrote the letter to Elvis in case she died. Childbirth is no easy task these days, but it was even tougher in the 50s. You could die. There was plenty of stories of mothers dying. So she wrote the letter to Elvis. She stuck it in the drawer addressed to Elvis Presley. So the nurse would have seen that, and she would have put two and two together. Lucy checked in as a Lucy Presley. That's what her name was in the hospital. And here's a letter to Elvis Presley. Why wouldn't it be Elvis's child? So said that woman was very suspicious for a reason.
Yeah, and who would have planned? Lucy plans this in 1958 and then hides it for 20 years and waits for me to find her and bug her every day for 2 years to do the book and to tell her story. Crazy, the deniers. Just crazy. I mean, it's impossible that this isn't true.
Well,
Absolutely impossible. Too much planning from too long, long ago.
well, here's what the deniers probably haven't done. They probably haven't sat down and read the book all the way through. That's one thing they probably haven't done. They've also taken, I read a lot of different books. Elvis and Kathy Westmoreland, his background singer, wrote a book the same year as this one. So here's the poetic part of us talking. You heard Kentucky Rain while you were listening to a sports talk radio show. The day we're going to have a conversation, you weren't trying to, but you heard
Right.
it. The last
It
night I was
bled over. The atmospheric conditions made it bled over, and it's Elvis singing Kentucky Rain, giving me my opening for our show tonight. How about that?
very poetic.
What spiritual? It might be Elvis
It might have
himself.
been Elvis himself.
Elvis himself could have done that today.
He was parting the clouds. He was like, "Let the song bleed through here for my Dary
Yeah,
Matera
from a
here."
Mexican radio station, I think, playing Kentucky Rain. Wipes
So,
out my sports talk radio.
so you
Gives
had
me
that
the
happen. I was scrolling through Facebook last night, and that's where I saw about the lawnmower and Vernon buying it in Elvis's freshman year. The other night, about 4 or 5 days ago, after we did our video, um, when you're talking about deniers, Kathy Westmoreland, Charlie Hodge, they don't believe in this story. They didn't, but she didn't believe in the story because she didn't read it. That's the first thing. It came out in
Right.
87, came out in 87, came out in 87. She hadn't read the book. So, but here's the story that I saw the week before, and I might have mentioned it on some of the videos. But Elvis Presley had been sued for supposedly getting a girl pregnant in California. It was a big old thing. He had a private investigator that he hired, and they were giving Elvis Presley lie detector questions, a bunch of them, a bunch of just base test questions before they asked him if he'd had sexual relationships with this woman, etc. Well, one of the questions he asked was, Elvis, how many women have you known in your lifetime? And Elvis said about 5,000. That was what he said. And asked him a few other questions. And Elvis did bring up the name Desiree. Now in the book it says, but Desiree wasn't a child, it was a woman. Now we obviously know that the nickname Elvis gave Lucy was Desiree, but in the book that Charlie wrote, or the interview that Charlie Hodge did, it was used to prove that it was not. There was no way Elvis would have had a child named Desiree, because he didn't talk about. He talked about a woman named Desiree, not a child. But
Right.
so the fact that it's mentioned in the history of Elvis gives more credence and more evidence, because Elvis was under lie detector test, and he volunteered the name Desiree.
Yeah. And that's what the naysayers say. He didn't know the child named Desiree. And I have to say that was his nickname for Lucy, people. The
Right.
Marlon Brando movie about Napoleon. I
Hmm.
think they
Well,
either saw it together or they both liked it. Maybe they saw it together. I'm trying to remember.
in the book, I think they saw it together. But the point is, what
Yeah.
he wasn't talking about a child. They were asking him all the women that he had known, and Desiree was one of the women that he had known. But Desiree was Lucy because that was what he called her. He called her Desiree. He wrote the poem, My
Yeah.
Desiree. So that's what I tried to bring earlier in the week, and I think that's part of what's bringing a lot of people around. They're researching themselves. They're listening to you and I talk. I mean, you don't seem insane to me. You seem very sane.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
did
and
20 other books since then with mafia killers and all kind of people, and the publishing industry kept hiring me over and over and over. So I'm not some crazy who came up with a story. I mean, my career just went on and on. And I was a journalist before that. As I wrote recently, I mean, I was the force that got the book published. It wasn't Lucy, woman from Texas, very secretive, and her daughter who knew nothing. I mean, that was the problem in the beginning when they asked Desiree about the story. Desiree would say, I don't know. Ask my mom. That's what she would tell me. I'm Elvis's daughter. I don't know why or how. You got to talk to my mom. And I did. And man, she had a whale of a story. Even if you could plug in any singer. You could have plugged in you in Are You Lonesome Tonight, and it'd be a fabulous, fabulous book. So what a story she had.
yeah, and
And
that's one
it's
of the
40
things.
years. No one's come up with a smoking gun yet. They just say, I would have known. I would have known. I was Elvis's best friend. They were all Elvis's best friend. Everybody he ever met was his best friend and confidant. They all say that, but none of them were. I don't think
Yeah,
hardly any of them were. Maybe Joe Esposito was nice. I think Lucy liked Joe Esposito. And I was looking through the book uh, to try to find the Kentucky Rain passage. I guess you haven't got to that yet.
not yet.
And the book had no index. I don't know why. All my other books have an index, but that one doesn't. So I couldn't find it. But I was, boy, I lost my train of thought while I was thinking about Kentucky Rain. I did a Joe
But
Biden.
you mentioned Joe Esposito, that Lucy liked Joe Esposito, and then
Oh,
you talked.
yeah, I was looking through the photo sections of the book, and there's a picture of Desiree with Vester Presley. I don't know if you see that in the book, but she's there with Vester Presley. And
Yeah.
Lucy talked on the phone with Vester Presley. Vester Presley was at the gate. I think he ran the gate of Graceland. That was his job for a while.
Hmm.
Elvis
Yes.
hired Vester, and Lucy would call him and talk to him when Elvis wasn't available. He was really, really nice to her. And he met their daughter. Vester met the Elvis. There's a picture of the two of them in the book, right in the
Hmm.
book. Desiree and Vester. I'm sure Vester took pictures with a lot of people, and that's what some people will say. But then again, Lucy probably told Vester that their daughter was coming to Graceland and set it
And
up.
yeah, and possibly once again, that was probably after Elvis passed. I'm sure, right? The picture with him and with her investor, because I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah, of
he would have said
course.
nothing. Yeah.
Because Vester would have said, "Come on in, Desiree, meet your father." Because
Yeah.
Vester had been talking to Lucy probably from the 50s, maybe. He
Hmm.
knew Lucy. So he knew that was his daughter. And I'm sure Vester would have ushered her right in to meet Elvis.
Yeah,
But
if Elvis would have known that he had a daughter, it would have been a whole different thing. But obviously, throughout this whole story, it's all been about Lucy protecting Elvis, also from scandal, but also from safety. This guy that she was married to that sued you and sued Lucy and sued Random House. The sister sued you guys or tried to for defamation of character. That's another thing we pulled up and we looked into. She was trying to claim that she was there, but Lucy wasn't forced to marry this guy. Well, guess what? Lucy's 11. It doesn't matter whether there's somebody
yeah,
forced.
that was the family trying to protect their family shame. Another
Yes.
woman tried to sue just because we described her as gray. Just a country couple that were a normal, non-colorful. We're writing about Elvis, who was known for his baubles and
Yeah.
outfits and
Flashing it. Yeah.
Vegas and color. And Lucy was a fashion designer at one point, so she liked colorful clothes. So I just described the couple as gray, and they sued, but they lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody lost that sued you.
And nothing, neither of those lawsuits had anything to do with Lucy's relationship with Elvis.
So here's something that once again I haven't gone back to read. Now, to the defense of the people that looked at this, they pulled up death records, marriage certificates. We know that the man was married to somebody else, but what they found was that the woman that he was married to first before Lucy, that she got remarried in 1947, which is a year after him and Lucy got married. Now this is something I'll send you, the research that they've done. I'm not that concerned with stuff like that. I don't know whether the man lived with her for a short period of time, whether he came and went, because you're not going to write 500 pages about 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, because Lucy is not going to remember everything from that time period because it's PTSD trauma. But he was married, but then she remarried somebody in 47, and the guy was 35, not 45, but according to the documents that we researched, to me, I don't care whether it's 45 or 35 or 32. The dude was 30, married an 11-year-old. It's wrong. It's a forced arranged sort of thing. So even researching this stuff, it allows me to kind of answer some of the people that are saying, "Oh, this can't be true because this age is wrong." What difference does it make if there's a difference in age? Unless he was 12 and she was 11. He's 32 and she's 11. And this guy's last name was Ware. And here's the other thing, which maybe you researched it, and maybe I'm telling you some new stuff, maybe you've heard it. But the disc jockey or the TV personality at KNOE was Dixie Ware, related to this guy, the man. So I think that they had connections in that town. First off, how do you marry an 11-year-old?
Well, you know how Brooke Shields started her career, how she took off her career. She was a 10-year-old prostitute in where?
Yeah.
Louisiana. In Louisiana. What was the name of that movie? Do you remember? Someone will remember.
I saw it a couple weeks ago. You're right. Yeah, she was a prostitute at 10, and like literally she was kissing grown adults in the movie. It was horrible.
Yeah. Brooke Shields, I think she was 10 and she played a 10-year-old prostitute in Louisiana. So there was nothing uncommon about that part of the story. Plus, I didn't spend a lot of time researching that part of the story. I was researching Lucy and Elvis. Whatever she said about whatever happened to her then was really of no consequence to me.
Yeah.
But people will point out if they find one thing. She said she got A on a test in fourth grade and it was really a B. They're going to go, aha, she didn't know Elvis at all because she got a B in science and not an A. That's the way the silly naysayers.
Your point exactly is that details, they matter sometimes, and sometimes they don't. Details about ages of who her husband was, like I said, for instance, whether it was 42, 45, 38, 35, 32. You mentioned the movie with Brooke Shields called Pretty Baby, I think it was.
Pretty Baby, there came to you. Exactly.
Yeah. Regardless, and it doesn't matter whether it's a culture thing or not, it's wrong. And so she had to go through this stuff. And people are like, well, they must have lived together because his wife that he was married to when he was married to her married somebody else in 47. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he was living with his sister. Maybe he had another house. But regardless, she had to deal with having 3 children by this man by the time she was 16. One at 11, one at 12 or 13, and one at 15. That's horrific.
My grandmother had my father when she was 14. Italian immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, 14 years older than my father. Italian immigrants in New York. So it's not just Louisiana and the hick South. That was going on everywhere.
Yeah, it's part of it. It's part of it. But, like I said, why people are coming around to reading it more, which I was like, you got to reach out and get somebody else to press this, because I guarantee you people would start reading it if it had a different cover on it that's more modern looking. This is a story that I feel needs to be retold, and that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm reading it. Why you and I are talking. It's an amazing story about something that most Elvis fans never would have believed before, and a lot of them hadn't even heard about. Regardless of how successful the book is, a lot of them hadn't heard about it.
Wow, the whole world heard about it in 87. I mean, you
Right.
couldn't go anywhere. Summer of 87, it was just all over.
Yeah, it was
All over.
popular in Russia and China. But the thing is, what happened
Yeah.
more than likely was Priscilla Presley and the estate probably crushed it.
They
Because
tried, but it got out. They crushed the interest in it among their hardcore fans and got them to hate it or not buy it. But there are millions of copies out there. I mean, literally millions of copies around the world,
Mhm,
multiple languages. There's copies of it in Japanese where it goes back to front.
mhm.
Japanese books start at the back and go to the front. So I have those. So it's printed, it's just a great story.
Yeah.
Great
Well,
story.
I'm seeing.
I remember
Go
a
ahead.
Hollywood producer saying, that's a great story. It doesn't matter that it's Elvis. The woman has a great story in and of herself, what she went through in her life and how strong she was and how she overcame her childhood, her pretty baby childhood. She was pretty
Mhm.
baby. Exactly. She was like Brooke Shields. Not as tall though.
Right.
Brooke
Well,
Shields.
it's funny you say that. Like I said, I know you haven't watched any of the videos that I've made reading the book for the most part. You might have watched one of them.
I
You might
watched
have watched
some of
one or
them,
two.
but I didn't know you were making them in between our interviews.
Yeah.
So I got to go
Before,
back and see those.
I'll send you a playlist. I don't know if you even have time to watch them all because I think we're at about 20 right now, about 20 videos.
Wow.
So that's one of the things that I said in the beginning, and I've said several times. It's such an amazing story, even if Elvis wasn't part of it. The
Right.
courage that she had to have to get through all of that stuff, the wonderful mother that she was, and that's to me that's the number one reason I think why her and Elvis weren't together. You can't take your children first off, take them across the country following a rock and roll movie star. You just don't do that. Not if you care about your children. She was protecting Elvis too, but she was protecting her children.
Yeah. And they weren't his children. Paul McCartney took his family everywhere. You'll remember. Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney, they just
Uh-huh.
traveled in a bus with they raised their kids on the road doing tours. So, but that wasn't Elvis's kids, and it
No,
would have been a scandal,
it
especially in
would
the
have been.
50s.
You're
After
psychic.
we mentioned before, Jerry Lee Lewis almost screwed up his career by marrying a 13-year-old cousin or something.
Mhm.
Did you know Jerry Lee? Did you meet
I
him?
never met. I never met him. No, and I mean, I loved his music and I loved his style, but I also kind of didn't like the fact that he was so jealous over Elvis. He said so many things that were just horrible about Elvis after he
Oh, I didn't
died
know
that
that.
I stopped being a fan. You know,
Wow. Didn't they come up? Didn't they both Sun Records?
they did.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if it wasn't Jerry Lee Lewis's cousin, it might have been a little different, not much different, but it was his cousin. And he was so defiant about it. He was, how Jerry Lee Lewis was. He was
Yeah.
defiant,
It was a
and
good
that's just
movie. His movie was a good movie.
it
And
was.
Elvis made the same mistake afterward. Was it who did it first? Jerry Lee? Yeah. And then Priscilla was just a
Yeah.
little girl, teenage girl, and Elvis
But
did.
she ended up being 21 when they got married versus 13 when Jerry Lee Lewis married his cousin. So there's a big
Yeah, but
age
when did
difference.
Elvis meet Priscilla and
She was
started dating her?
14 in Germany. But
14,
it,
yeah.
but it was a couple month period, and then he didn't see her again for another almost 3 years. It's not
Wow.
like they had this mad romance for 3 years. I'm also reading and
I
all my
thought the
viewers know.
father, who was a colonel, cracked down on Elvis.
No, I'm reading
Wild
Child
Ride.
Bride. Now, once again, if you haven't read it, if you got any interest, it's very well documented. It's got like literally 30 to 40 pages of sources.
Isn't that the one where that guy got sued for saying that he was with Priscilla first?
So this is what
What's that
happened.
guy? I forgot his
His
name.
name Curry,
Yeah,
Curry Grant. Now what happened
Curry
was
Grant. I
that
talked to him multiple times.
we have to have a conversation about that on another story, because what I read, obviously in there, was that she did sue him, but then she also gave him money. He never had to pay her any money. She
Right.
gave him money.
For
So
pictures.
yeah,
She paid him for $75,000 for photos.
and never made him give her the money, because
Right.
that's another story. And of course, we're almost at the end of the book. I've maybe got 25 videos on that. But the big
That's
thing
the
is that
book that Curry Grant says that he was with Priscilla first, right?
yes,
Yeah, he
yes,
told me that. I remember
yes.
him telling me that. And he
That's
sounded, I mean, he tells everybody, I guess, so it's got to be credible. I don't
yeah.
think he'd make that up, you know?
And I don't think so either. And there was a lie detector test. It was the stress analyzer test. Somebody gave Priscilla. Priscilla came and sat down for that book. She sat down with Curry for the book. They had a stress analyzer test where she was asked questions. He was asked questions. She failed them all. He passed them all. Then she got up and left. And then she had Joe Esposito call and threaten lawsuits, threaten this and that. But they never could sue Suzanne. And so she put the book out. But that's
Yeah.
interesting that you talked to Curry. That's something I
Well,
didn't expect to hear tonight.
and I don't want to cast any aspersions on
Sure.
Priscilla, you know? She was a young girl and there was a lot of handsome soldiers around
Yeah.
wherever she was in Germany. I mean, I grew up on military bases. So a lot of my high school friends and girlfriends were dating soldiers on the military base. They were all teenagers. Some of them were freshmen. I remember freshman girls would be dating airmen who were in their 19, 20. Freshman girls were 14. That was going
Sure.
on Clark Air Base where I grew up all the time. Ticked me off. Us high school boys were ticked off because the airmen were plucking off our women. So that was
Yeah.
all normal. So there's no aspersions on
No, and
Priscilla,
that's what I've
whatever
talked.
the truth is. She was
That's what
just
I've talked
acting.
about when I'm.
She was
Yeah.
acting like normal teenage girls on military bases full of handsome soldiers.
Right. And that's what I always say when I'm reading the book. However, the big thing in the Elvis community, there's a huge group of people that are Elvis fans that are not happy that Priscilla keeps spinning this love story fairy tale when she divorced Elvis and she left him and cheated on him and left him. Now, Elvis had his affairs before the marriage. But the big thing is that if that book is indeed true, if she had sexual partners before Elvis and while Elvis was in Hollywood and all that other stuff, it's a normal physical thing for people to do. But the fact that she's profiting off of a story that's not true is what makes a lot, allegedly not true because of the book, makes a lot of Elvis fans not like Priscilla already. They didn't like her anyways because she left Elvis, she cheated on him. She said that Elvis movie, he wasn't on the steps crying when she's leaving. She walked up to him, and this is documented, right before a show and said, "I'm leaving you and taking Lisa." A
Yeah.
whole different story than what she spends allegedly. Now I got to say allegedly with everything these days, but regardless, it's very interesting that you talked to Curry Grant. That's something I did not expect to hear from you tonight.
I talked to all the guys. I talked to the mafia. I talked to the guy you mentioned before,
You got
Klein.
with
Klein.
Charlie
Klein
Hodge,
was pretty
George
mean,
Klein.
but you know, I got them all to admit that they really wouldn't have known. They all told me that at the end of our conversation when I'm talking about poems and the proof and well, I guess he could have, but they couldn't do it. They were still obligated to Priscilla and the Presley estate.
And that's
But
that's the thing that I've been talking about. The fact that Desiree has no father. We know who was in control of the Elvis estate truly was Priscilla all those years to protect Lisa's interest, to protect her interest. So none of those guys from Joe Esposito, Charlie Hodge, anybody that could come back and work for Elvis Presley Enterprises or get money from, they would not go on the record to say these things because it was their livelihood on the line. And then also the DNA, the fact that she has no father on record, that any of Elvis's relatives was probably told not to give any blood samples, and
yeah,
DNA wasn't it. DNA has been an old thing, but all of these tests that are out there, they're in the last 10, 15 years, and all of Elvis's relatives are all old or dead. Why would they want to even put anything in the system? And so that's why it's probably showing up it's not a match. It proves a little more conclusively to me that Elvis could be her father or should be her father, because there's no other match in the world that showed up.
Yeah. And you got to, and those commercial DNA places, who knows how well they are? I've read stories where people put their cat's DNA in there and their dog's DNA, and they were related to the King of England, their dog or something. So you can't trust any of that. And like I
Yeah.
said, Elvis and the Colonel were already on record as fighting paternity suits from way back when. They knew
Yeah.
that was coming because Elvis was such a horn dog. Like you said, 5,000 women he said he was with. So they were faking blood tests and putting them in court. And I had his fake blood test. And the private detective who did it, I talked to him and he laughed and admitted that they
Are we
faked.
talking? Are we talking John O'Grady?
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to John O'Grady too. I talked to all those guys. They told me a lot of stuff off the record that they couldn't say. And he just laughed and said, yeah, we faked that test. And he even told me, John O'Grady told me, don't have sweet Desiree check against that blood test. Just don't do it. So
Okay.
he was kind of warning me off because he probably knew Desiree was real too. There was another some guy in Las Vegas who had a connection to Elvis, who he's had said he had letters where Elvis was paying him to try to find Lucy. So that was he was a young blonde guy, and they had contacted me and sent me some supposed letters that Elvis had written to him and asked him if he could find Lucy for him. So there's
Hmm.
all kind of stories like that. The more and more that comes out, the more the internet's around, you get those stories coming out.
So, so that's a good place to kind of segue here. Lucy wrote the letter to Elvis while she was in the hospital,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna read it here. And
I
then I got a
forgot
couple.
all about that. So I'll be
Good.
hearing this fresh.
Good. Then I got a couple follow-up questions. So here we go.
All right.
This is what the letter said. I'm going to read the section that you wrote. Through the years, Lucy has kept in her Bible the unmailed letter she wrote to Elvis that night. It remains in the original envelope, now yellowed and torn, and is addressed to Mr. Elvis Presley, Graceland, Highway 51, South Memphis, Tennessee. In the right corner, she wrote personal and underlined it. Inside, the letter has aged a little bit better than the envelope, but the ink has faded, but the writing remains clear. This is what she wrote. My dearest L, my love, I suppose by now you must think nothing else but that I deserted you, or perhaps that I don't care for you. How it pains me to have gone from you. My darling, I want to say first the very reason I went away is because I love you so very much. You see, darling, I can't detail it completely right now because my time is running out. I'm at this very moment going to have your baby, our baby. I'm writing because I'm afraid, Elle, afraid I might die and our baby will have no one. There is no reason to go on if I can't be with you. And I've wanted to tell you so many times, oh, I need you so badly this moment to hold me, Elle. I'm so afraid. I don't know if I'll ever see you again. But remember, I love you more than I can tell you. The reason I left is because I didn't want you to be killed by this awful man. He promised to destroy you and kill me if I'd see you again. My everlasting love, I can't live knowing I hurt you. Will you please forgive me and please understand that I do love you with all my heart. I can't see beyond this moment because it's hard to think right now. Elle, my darling, I'm so very sorry about your mother. I wanted to come to you and hold you so badly, but I was so afraid. Please take care of our baby and know I love you, El Lancelot, with all my heart. Pour toujours, mon amour, your Desiree. So that was the letter.
Now again, ask the people I didn't write that. Lucy wasn't a internationally famous best-selling author like me, and that's beautifully written. I didn't write that letter. I didn't fake it. I saw it. I knew how old it was and how it'd been in her Bible. So how did she plan all that? That was very touching. And guess what? That's the exact contrast to Elvis singing Kentucky Rain. He's basically singing the same thing to her that's in that letter. He's searching for her in the rain, and she's having his baby in somewhere and writing him that letter, but never mailing it. That's so Lucy. To write that beautiful letter, never mail it, and then probably hid it from me for 2 years. She told me about it, wouldn't give it to me, wouldn't let me see it, wouldn't send it to me, just like the poem. We all, the publishers, everybody decided that she really didn't have the poem. Then one day she sends me the poem, and there it is. Total proof, the whole story. While Elvis is singing Kentucky Rain and anguishing with rain in his shoe, walking the streets of Kentucky, heartbroken, looking for Lucy. No other woman in the world did Elvis not know where she was ever. And there he is singing that song. And there's that what a beautiful letter. I still don't remember it. It doesn't resonate with me for some reason. And I
And
had to,
you had to have seen it, because first off, you wrote about it in your
yeah.
little section. That's your section that you wrote about. That's what I was going to ask you.
Oh,
You
I
know, like,
copied it. If it's in the book, I had the letter in front of me writing the words into my word processor at the
okay.
time, one of the ancient word processors that just came out. I think that was, wow, that was my first computer word processor. So I had to copy the words down. I didn't
Hmm.
memorize them from her reading them over the phone. So
Right.
I had the letter and I knew how it looked and I knew it was in her Bible, so I knew all that stuff. Boy,
Well,
that was
and
beautiful. That was moving letter, man.
it is, and
Lucy
she
had a
wrote it.
good spirit. Lucy could write very well. Very, very romantic. She was very melodramatic. My agent wanted me to tone that down. And one version I did tone that down. And then when I got the contract to write the book, I I flowered it all up because that's who she was. That's how
Hmm.
she talked. That's how she cried. She's telling me the story. She's crying. She's going through all that. She's not putting on a show for me. It's just me and her. And she's doing all that. And she talked very, very romantically. Everything, which is any psychiatrist tell you, a woman who had her life and grew up with the abuse and as an
Hmm.
11-year-old bride to someone she hated and treated her poorly and had those children. Uh, yeah, she had this relationship and she was going to live her life through that relationship her whole life. And when she spoke of it, it was going to be wonderfully romantic. And I went with that.
Well,
Why
here's
not?
something too. Here's something too that I want to share with the audience. You know, you do remember sometimes things word for word with things when you're younger, a deep, passionate love that you had, even if it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. There was somebody before my wife that I was so in love with, so in love with. I remembered her writing me stuff. I remember things that she said. I could remember full conversations.
Right.
And I mean, to this day, there's a little note that on the first night that we met, she wrote a note to me, stuck it in my back pocket and it said, "He's staring at me. I think it's a sign, but I'm not the one he'll be kissing goodnight." I ended up kissing her goodnight that night instead of the girl I had date brought to the show because I liked her so much. I just met her. We had this passionate spark about each other. I can still see it to this day, and I remember. And this is when I was 19 or 20, so that's almost 30 years ago. You do remember things accurately when it's important to you because you say it over and over again. You remember it over and over again.
Yeah, when I was looking for Kentucky Rain and I was strumming through the book, I saw a passage where Elvis wanted to give Lucy money and asking her if she needed any money and did she
Mhm.
need any money for her children? I don't know if you got to that
I
yet.
have not yet. No.
And Lucy responded, there shouldn't be no money exchanged between us. And then Elvis laughed and said, well, I'm not asking you for any money.
That's
And
funny,
Elvis found that humorous. And
right?
that's something, it's such a natural conversation again that happens between people. But I just read that and I thought, well, I would have said the same thing if I was Elvis. She said it, no money exchanged between us. And then, well, I'm not
Right.
asking you for money. I'm Elvis Presley. I'm richer than
Yeah.
whoever was rich at that time.
I'm
But
looking forward to reading. I'm looking forward to reading that. Saying, "Well, I'm not asking you for money, Lucy."
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But he was
Um,
laughing. I'm not asking you for money, babe. And she laughed and he laughed by her expression. But that's so woman, you know. She put it on an equal basis. There should be no money exchanged between us, you know.
Well, and she's stayed very consistent in this book from
Yeah.
where we're at from the beginning, where she doesn't want people giving her money. She tries to hand money back. She didn't want Elvis to send her money. She had to use that $5,000 when she was running away from the man and going to Colorado, but she hadn't used it up to that point. It was just an uncashed check, and
Yeah.
she cashed it to get out of town. But she told him, "I don't want your money. I don't want you to send me dresses." And it's the same thing with all these older guys, like the Mr. Durrett, the guy that kept coming up and offering a life with him, and he was rich and he had a white limousine and he gave her money and all this other stuff. There's a lot of people that pursued Lucy that wanted to take care of her, but she always pushed them away. The money part, I don't want it. She wanted to do it on her own, but she didn't want to be bought. And that's not that Elvis was buying her, but she
Yeah.
thought about everything that had to do with money and men as owning me, like she was owned as an 11-year-old.
Well, Lucy had an ocean of pride, just an ocean of pride. Even though sometimes the editors would be so frustrated with Lucy and saying, "This woman and her pride. I mean, come on." The female editors, they get mad. My agent would get mad at her because before she would release the poem, or she supposedly had tapes of her and Elvis singing together. And I never got the tapes. She would not let go of the tapes. And when there was a lot of controversy on the book, the publisher wanted the tapes, and my agent wanted the tapes of her and Elvis singing, and she
Mm-hmm.
would not budge on the tapes. She felt the poem, she had given enough. I wonder if Desiree has the tapes.
This
I'll
is
have
these are
to ask
good.
Desiree. Desiree
These are
had,
great. Yeah, these are great things that you're bringing up because people have talked about all these tapes, supposed tapes. But here's what I would know from the sound of
what
this
song
woman.
they sang together. I'd ask them, well, what song do you sing together? She didn't think and hesitate. She came right out with whatever it was. I forgot what it was. Maybe The Wonder of You or something. Was that
Well,
one of
I'll have
Elvis's
to read
songs?
that part. We're not there yet.
No, I don't even think that's in the book.
Oh, okay.
I think because she wouldn't give me the tape, I didn't put it in the book. But somewhere they sang a song together and taped it. And boy, was she hanging on to that. She was a stubborn, stubborn French woman, tough French Louisiana woman with tons of pride. And she wouldn't take money from it. She didn't want money from the book. I had to, like I said, all the money went through me. I could have robbed her blind. I could have Colonel Parkered her, or all the managers like Billy Joel's. I was doing a Buddha Records book. I think Billy Joel's first manager took all his money. So I could have done that to Lucy, but I had to send her personal checks. That's how she got, I insisted she make money, that I'm not going to take all the money. I insisted, and I sent her personal checks. She wasn't even on record with the publisher and didn't care to be. Isn't that amazing?
That's
Stubborn,
amazing. And
stubborn pride, but helped her story and made me believe in her. She just wanted to tell her story to Desiree. That was it.
well, I think what you just shared is going to go. It's going to go miles with the people that are listening and watching this because that's the very first thing people think, and they still think it. Oh, you wrote a book, you made a bunch of money. That was really the ulterior motive. The fact that you had to push money on her, first off, you know, shows that she was never money motivated. In the book, she's never money motivated. After the book, she's never money motivated. And so, she's a consistent character. She has a consistent character, and you can rely on a consistent character normally to tell the truth. I think if I was a judge,
Yeah.
that's what I would be looking at. And then the other thing you said, people are talking about these tapes. Well, she had this poem as well. Some people, I'm sure, haven't watched every video, every second of every video. They might not have heard it, but you had a poem that Elvis had wrote to her, and it was authenticated by the world's most renowned handwriting expert, Charles Hamilton, I believe, and then
Yes.
also by the FBI.
Yes. And
So,
a handwriting expert who had worked for the FBI. I think he was retired at the time or something, but he worked for the FBI and four or five others. And one in Texas that somehow I didn't even do it, that I think Geraldo Rivera or someone got this guy in Texas to look at the poem, and he authenticated. So it was like six, it was 6 for 6,
and it's not in this book because Elvis Presley Enterprises
Yeah.
claimed it as property of Elvis Presley and Elvis Presley Enterprises and blocked you from putting it in here.
But while at the same time saying the story's not true, and it didn't know it. But it's the poem he sent her is ours because that's Elvis's song. It's like a song. And I'm trying to
Right.
say, well, if the story's not true, how is the poem your property? Well, then they fumbled and all that. But they all knew it was true. That's why they had these meetings, and they had, remember, the news were reporting that they had these big meetings at Presley Enterprises about the book and what's going to happen and how we're going to fight it. It's almost like the politics we just went through. They were going to fight it. I told you William Morris represented them and was charged with shooting it down while at the same time talking to me and trying to get me to sign up with their agency because they read the book and they said it was beautiful. They knew it was true and they knew my career would soar. So after beating me down and going on Entertainment Tonight and saying, we don't believe this book, and then they're on the phone with me the next day, hey, you want to sign up with us? Isn't that crazy? What
Yeah.
a adventure that was.
Now,
Venture.
did you sign up with them? Did you let them represent
No,
you?
I didn't sign up with them. I already had an agent and I'm
There
very
you go.
loyal. You know that
You can't buy Dary. You can't buy it.
my agent, Connie Clausen, who was a powerful New York agent who believed in me and my career, and she was my agent. So I wasn't going to backstab her. If I got famous with the book that she pushed through and was on my side, I was loyal to my agent. You probably were loyal. You know that loyalty in the business. You get a hit, you get something, and the other people, Colonel Parkers of the world, want to steal you. So, I told him, thank you, William Morris, but I got an agent. I already have an agent, and she sold my next, 5, 6 books before she passed, and for even more money than the Elvis books. So I paid off for being loyal to Connie Clausen. She was a great agent. She was my agent. Another aside, she played Rapunzel in Ringling Brothers Circus. She rode the elephants in the
Really?
circus as Rapunzel because she had beautiful long hair. That was my agent. So I wasn't going to backstab her. I'm not that kind of guy, even when William Morris came. But it was just funny that, and I said, I thought you guys were saying I was a fraud and my career was over. And they just laugh. And then, no, we know it's true, but we represent the Presley estate. So they just laughed it off. That in Hollywood, that kind of backstabbing goes on every day. So that was no big deal. But yeah, I couldn't betray Rapunzel. How could I betray Rapunzel in the Ringling Brothers Circus riding the elephants? My agent, Connie Clausen, great lady. I called her a New York gutter rat because she lived in New York and was whistling for cabs. Tough old bird, but she was a great agent. So that's why I
That's
didn't
wonderful.
sign with William Morris.
I'm gonna hit stop real quick here. No. So yeah, I appreciate that loyalty because once again, yeah, you could have signed, you could have made more money, and who knows, you could have even been a bigger author. But I think you
But
did it the right
yeah,
way,
of course.
or
Movie,
you're a bigger
all
author
that.
because you
William
believe in.
Morris was, at the time, William Morris was the most powerful agency in the world. Of course, they represented Elvis and the Presley estate. So they were a very, very powerful agent.
They still
And
are.
and
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think it was the Elvis book, but Annette Funicello's husband, Geraldo, something like that. He was he was a big agent at William Morris. Was it
Hmm.
Annette Funicello or Anita Bryant? I think it was Annette Funicello's husband, little Italian guy who was one of William Morris's big agents. So I met him on another project in Hollywood, and we were sitting down, and I was talking, hey, you guys, screwed me over, and then you tried to hire me. And he said, yeah, I knew about that. That was a good book. He told me that was a good book you wrote about Elvis. Yeah, we had to represent the estate. They were a big client. And I said, well, you guys tried to hire me or get me as a client. And he said, yeah, I know. I pushed that. That was a great book you wrote. So me and Gerardo or Gerald, whatever his name
Yeah.
was.
I
But
can't help you there because I just all I think of when I think of Annette Funicello is her on the beach. That's all I can think
yeah,
of.
yeah. He was a Frankie Avalon looking guy. And
Hmm.
he made her career because he was a big time Hollywood agent. You see that a lot in those stories. The actresses marry their agents or have affair with their
Yeah.
agents and managers and all that. So yeah, and I ended up meeting him years later, and we laughed about what they tried to do to me and ruin my career. And he's saying, well, we were going to bill you back up, but you didn't sign with us. So I said, well, I'm loyal to my Rapunzel. I had to be loyal to Rapunzel riding the elephants in the circus.
It's like you were hanging out with Colonel Tom Parker. He was in the
Yeah,
circus or something, you know. It's
yeah,
like
there
it's
was a meeting. Joe Esterhaus was in that meeting too, I think. You ever heard of him? He was a big Hollywood screenwriter. And we were
mhm.
having a meeting. I forgot what the heck book it was at the time. One of my subsequent books, maybe Quitting the Mob or something. And Joe Esterhaus, he was the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood. I think he wrote Mel Gibson movies, maybe Die Hards and all of those. So we were in a meeting together, and I was laughing with the William Morris guy.
I'm sorry. I was looking at some comments here. There's like not the last video, but the video before has 108 comments on it that I did the reading and was talking about it. And there's just a lot of people that are believing the story. And there's a few people, the naysayers, that will never believe it. And I always say, read the whole story, then come back and tell me you don't believe it. Read the whole story, do research, then come back because we got Google at our fingertips. You
Or
know,
tell me
here's
how tell me how she got the poem. All this I
right.
want one
That's
naysayer to tell me how the heck did she get this $1 million poem that Desiree's sitting on? I mean, come on, people.
yes, and that's the thing. It's that once again, they still want to see the poem. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's not enough
See
to
it?
say
What if
that
they say it? It's online. Did you
it's
find
not.
it?
And I'm going to do a video myself of a reading of the poem and a poem as well this week. And
Someone had the actual writing I saw online once. It's
huh,
amazing how things leak out.
they might have written it themselves. You know, because people can do that. I can write it, but I'm just saying that
Oh,
we know the poem. Excuse me, we know the poem existed. Might have to edit that out. I had too much to drink. I had too much carbonation. But you had the actual poem. You saw the actual poem. You know, and so if anybody says the poem doesn't exist, they'd be calling you a liar, and the publisher's a liar. You
oh,
know,
they're
they
always calling me a liar. Remember, Charles Hamilton, the world's toughest
yes.
handwriting, he said he knew it was Elvis the moment he took it out of the envelope, and he thought it was going to be a fraud. He absolutely thought it was going to be, he knew because it had already kind of gotten out about the book coming. And he pulled it out and he said, this is Elvis. He just looked at it because he had done Elvis before. And
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I told you this last time because it's kind of a secret, but every once in a while, Elvis would cross a T in a extremely flourishing, unique way. It was it was all these twirls and like his taking care of business. It was a T. It's in the letter to the
Mm-hmm.
president, and it's in one of the T's or two of the T's in Lucy's poem. I mean, totally unique that nobody in the world even knew about. I don't even think Charles Hamilton knew about that T because I talked to him about it. And I told him after he even certified, I said, look at the president's letter, which I sent him, and look at the T in Lucy's poem. And it wasn't every T. It was just when the spirit moved Elvis,
Hmm.
he was thinking he wrote a good line. He just whipped that T around. And it's just, I saw it in both when I was looking at it. And I said, and he knew it. He said he wrote the preface to the paperback for free. We didn't even pay him. He just wrote a beautiful preface,
Which I need to
starting
get.
out.
I need to get a hold of the paperback. I only have the hardback, so I need to get
Yeah,
that and read it to everybody.
you got to read Charles Hamilton's preface because he wrote it. He opens it. You have one of the greatest love stories of all time in your hands. That's how he opened it.
Hmm.
And he talked about he knew it was Elvis when he pulled it. He was absolutely skeptical and saw it and said, and then he valued it at $100,000 at the time. And that was 40 years ago. So you can imagine what it is. So all the naysayers, and remember the one thing that keeps coming up that you even mentioned without mentioning it. Doesn't matter if 100 people say it's not true. If one person says, yeah, that's true, I saw them together in Monroe in 1955, or I saw them together in the hotel, and Lucy's husband knew because Elvis was calling all the time. Lucy's daughters, it was just got to be almost a joke. Mom, Elvis is on the phone again, trying to pretend he's someone else. He would say John Jones or something. And
Right.
all her daughters knew it was Elvis. Everybody but Desiree, I think, until she finally knew. So
So I'm going to read something for you right now. Going back to what we talked about before, when you say if just one person says something, it brings credence. And I'm going to probably wrap it up after this, so you can watch what's left of the sunset. If there's anything, it's pretty dark behind you. The
oh, I'm
sun's got to
good.
be
I
down.
can. It's not my party time yet in Arizona. It's only 6:45 or so. So I
So
got
so
time before I hit the nightclubs and country western bars and all that.
yes,
Going
yes.
out two-stepping to your songs,
Okay, all right. Do
right?
that. Yeah, you need to.
Country's big here in Arizona. We have
Yeah.
country thunder.
I
Someone
used to teach.
asked me if you were going to play the next country thunder here in Arizona.
Hmm. Now, yeah, we'll have to talk to my agent once I find another agent.
Yeah, tell them
Um,
that I'll introduce you.
yeah. So hey, I'm gonna read this. This is what we talked about earlier. Um, Everybody's talking about how Elvis didn't play anywhere before he had a band, and it's in Jerry Hopkins' biography, and this is how it reads: One of Elvis's first jobs was singing at the Eagle's Nest, a spatial ballroom on Lamar Avenue that featured country swing bands and was tied in with a motel and a swimming pool. An early Sun recording artist named Malcolm Yelvington had a band playing weekends in the club, and Marion said Sam had persuaded Malcolm to let Elvis sing with him a couple times. And then Elvis appeared in the club with another band, one headed by Jack Clement. But Jack said that Elvis did the floor show, singing in between regular sets with his guitar. So that's probably the time period that Lucy saw Elvis singing in the Eagle's Nest between a band. That's
Yeah,
that's what in the story, and
I'm
people
trying to
just don't want to believe.
remember. Did Lucy say she saw him at the Eagle's Nest? I know the Eagle's Nest she mentioned.
Yes, she had went there with her sister and her sister's
Right.
husband because she
Her
said there's a
sister
Scott.
knew him.
Yes, her
Right.
sister knew him, and so Elvis came down off the stage and acted like he didn't know her, but then came up later and said he wanted to see her again. That he remembered her from Louisiana from the show with Governor James Snow, and then they met at the zoo next day when she was
Yeah.
doing a modeling assignment.
And I'm sure Lucy and her sister were the two most beautiful women in that audience. Elvis didn't miss that. Remember, her sister wasn't much older than her and was a beautiful woman in her own right. So Elvis surely saw them. He was probably nervous and all that, but then, yeah, he came up afterward and they went to the zoo and all that. Yeah, it's coming
Yeah,
back to me.
yeah, she was doing a modeling assignment, doing pictures at the zoo, and she had told him, "I can't. I'm working. I'm doing a modeling assignment tomorrow." And I guess he showed up and found her. It wasn't even like anything where they agreed to meet.
Oh,
He came there and found her. So that's the other thing. There's a story there where they went riding horses. Now everybody's saying that Elvis didn't know how to ride a horse,
yeah,
and that they
we
had to
went through
train
that
him out.
last time.
So
That was
yeah,
such BS. And he's in his first movie, right? A cowboy movie riding horses.
Yeah.
all
Well,
through the
they
movie.
said he had to be trained for it, but I did find a picture of him and June Wanico in early '56 on horses.
Yeah.
So it's not like he wouldn't. He loved cowboy stuff. It's not like he wouldn't have tried to ride some horses or knew how to ride horses. He lived in Tennessee. That being said, I mean that's just one of the naysayers that bring it up, and it's hard to find any research on that. It's
And
just one of those things you have to claim, you have to believe it or not believe it.
And remember, these were rental horses, older horses that people who had never rode a horse could go rent and get on these older horses and just trot along. It wasn't like Lucy and Elvis were racing or anything or
Mm-hmm.
chasing Native Americans or the cavalry. It was just a rental agency where the horses were really tame.
And then that's where I think there's people trying to research and see. Supposedly, the zoo didn't have horses to ride, but they had what's the park that Elvis used to always rent out. There was a park there, and that could have been near the zoo. They had the horses to rent. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are trying to find factual proof of these things, and the more they find, the more everybody else believes, and that's what I think is great right now. We have the power of the internet,
There
and we
were
have a lot of people finding
Back
stuff.
then there were rental horses places everywhere. People
Okay.
today in 2024 thinking about riding horses. This is 1950. There were horse riding businesses everywhere. Every little kid rode a pony, same
Mm,
place where the horses were, where all the children of the 50s and 60s and 70s rode a pony, was at the same rental horses places. We had a rental horse place in Clark Air Base where I grew up in the Philippines. We could rent horses on the military base on Clark Air Base in the Philippines. There were horse rental places everywhere. They come and go. They're hard to keep up. I guess it was hard
mhm.
to make a lot of money on them. And probably the legalities might have killed a lot of places. But back
Maybe.
then, they were everywhere. They came and went everywhere. So that's a dumb thing to question, whether
Yeah.
they could ride a
No,
horse.
once again, I think the big thing is here. There's just not a bunch of information about Elvis on horses until the movie Love Me Tender, you know. But the thing is, if you just do the common sense test, he loved westerns, he loved acting. What do? You put a hat on when you're younger. You get on a horse. You try to be like your heroes that are on the big screen. So that's one of the things that he coulda, woulda, and obviously did because Lucy has it in the book. Where they went riding that day. But that's been the biggest sticking point, which is interesting for a lot of people, is the horse incident.
That's a dumb
Um,
sticking point for that. Yeah, I had a girlfriend in Greenville when I was like fifth grade. And one of our dates was she took me out riding horses. I think that was the first and last time I ever rode a horse in my life because I had this little fifth grade girl who was good at it. And I'm
uh-huh.
this big athlete, football player, little league star, and I sucked at riding a horse. I had never done it before, but I couldn't tell you where I rented the horse or where we got the horses from Greenville, North Carolina. I mean, if I had to go back in my autobiography and prove that me and Frances, that was her name, rode a horse that day, I couldn't place it. That place probably
Mhm.
came and went. What's the first time you rode a horse?
When I was 18 or 19, maybe I was
Wow.
19.
You
Yeah.
grew up country and didn't ride a
Well,
horse?
I grew up in the middle of the desert, and of course I started singing, playing country music. I was a jazz trumpet player first. I was all American high
Oh,
school trumpet player as a jazz. So that was my first love. I was
my
singing.
brother-in-law was a trumpet player. We have so much in common. Wow.
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
Richmond,
But
Virginia. Yeah.
anyways, I got on a horse. I traded guitar lessons for horseback riding lessons, and my first time riding a horse was a trail ride. It was 3.5 miles up a mountain, and then about a flat mile to get to the club that I was singing that night. So
Ah,
I rode up there, got to the top of it, and there's 6 or 7 people, and I'm on a thoroughbred that's about 20 years old, so older, you know.
right. That was
But
the rental horses, the
yeah,
old ones.
they took off in front of us, and here I am getting dirt kicked in my face. The horse didn't like it. I'm holding my hat. My hat was so tight. I used to have hat bands that there's no way my hat would ever fall off, like literally. So the horse goes and starts weaving in between all of these other horses until we're out front. And I'm looking back and like we're flying. This is a thoroughbred. We are flying in the middle of the desert. And so I'm trying to pull on the reins. I'm trying to pull left, trying to pull right. And that horse kept going. And I'm thinking, I'm going to die. I was thinking, I'm 19 or 20 years old. And then I finally yanked it hard enough to pull it down to the side. It went over and jumped over a fence and skidded up next to a house. And then we walked all the way back to town. And I was never scared of being on a horse again because I survived
Wow.
just a racehorse, and jumping a fence, 3.5-foot fence. It jumped over it. And so I rode horses for years.
And the related question is, do you know where that rental horse agency is today? Could you find it?
I
Is
do,
it
but
still
that's okay.
there?
That's okay because I lived in the area and I know the guy that taught me. Here's another crazy thing.
Is it
The guy
still
that taught,
there? Is it still in operation?
they're not. It was a family that had horses, and the guy that
Right.
actually taught me how to ride the horse and how to bit the horse and saddle the horse. He got arrested for having a relationship with a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, there we go. Spinning back to that.
So why would I ever forget?
That's a good point. A lot of people with horse farms had private businesses, probably not even taxed or registered.
No, just private.
They just had a sign up on a tree, horse riding rentals, like $1, $2 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
Lucy and Elvis they were country people. They could have just gone to somebody's house, horse farm, and rented horses.
It's hard to tell. Yeah.
People are trying to find a registered business and all that. I bet they weren't paying taxes on the rental horses or incorporated their horse. That in those days, farms just rented horses.
It could have been right next to it could have been right next to the zoo. And this is Lucy's memory of 30 years back. It could have been right next to the zoo, or it could have been the zoo, or it could have been later on, but it's part of the story. And I don't think it matters where it happened because she says it's happened. She's got the poem from Elvis. Now here's one of the last questions for this one, because this gets asked all the time. And I haven't asked Desiree this yet. She sent me her number. I shot her a couple messages.
She's sweet. Have you talked to her? No.
Yep. Not yet. She said she gave me her phone number and said she does want to talk. But do you know what color her eyes are?
Desiree? Wow, it's a good question. Not sure.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people that say that her eyes are gray, steel gray. There's people that say, oh, if her eyes are brown, there's no way she could be Elvis's child. And I'm throwing that out there because it's a very small statistical possibility that with Elvis with blue eyes, with Lucy, I think she had blue eyes or gray eyes, something like that. But anyways, it is something I'll probably end up asking her. But
now that you mentioned that, I remembered dealing with that extensively in the book before I wrote the book. So at the time, I knew what her eye color was. I knew what Lucy's was, and I knew it matched, that it fit. Because I remember, I'm sure you'll come across one of my research parts in the book where I explain all that. Because at the time, before there was DNA, it was basic blood type and eye color. And I had to study blood types and I had to study eye color science, and it fit. Whatever her eye color is, me remembering from 40 years ago. I'm thinking gold. I flashed gold, but that could be just some other woman I know.
There's an interview, Donahue, Harrell, I don't know what it was, but somebody had asked something about what Desiree's eye color was. And I don't know whether Lucy gave two different answers, but that's where some of the confusion comes from. And I know I'm not really giving you the right background with it. I haven't watched it. I'm trying not to look at anything.
I'm sure it's in the book. Because now that you mention it, I remember doing all the research and looking at the charts, looking at what color parents could have eyes. I did all that. I covered that because I wasn't going to be tripped up on that. I was a trained journalist, wrote 2,000 stories, questioned every day. I wasn't going to get tripped up on something as basic as eye color not matching. Yeah, so
good. That's good.
40 years ago, I wrote this book, so things are coming back to me.
Well, you don't remember every single word and comma and period and hyphen.
Oh, and I wrote like 20 books since that. So I wrote another couple of million words. I got mafia guys' life stories and Charles Manson's life story and Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer's life, childhood and life story and his eye color and the mafia guy's eye color and Charles Manson's eye color. Manson's got kids out there.
Hmm.
That's an interesting story. He's got a bunch of kids, all changed their names, but
Yeah, I'm
they're out
sure.
there. And before we quit, Frank Sinatra has an illegitimate daughter who I was going to write her book. She lives in Arizona here on a horse farm, and
Really?
and he paid her off. He actually, Frank Sinatra paid this woman in a court case, and she
Huh.
raised horses, I think, somewhere in Sedona, Arizona, in the vortex with the UFOs. And I was going to
Right.
write her book, but for some reason the publishers weren't interested at the time. I don't know why. She
Hmm.
had a good story, and she had big, giant blue eyes. This Frank Sinatra illegitimate daughter. They all have illegitimate daughters. Most celebrities somewhere have them. Like the Aerosmith guy has probably the most famous
Oh,
one,
yeah, I'm sure.
you know,
Yeah. Steven.
Aerosmith guy.
It's
And
Steven Tyler, I think.
yeah, Liv Tyler is a famous movie star and all that. And
Yeah.
she was denied by everybody for a long time until he finally accepted her. So it's a common story. Frank Sinatra's daughter. I've been thinking about Billie Jean. Someone in the comment section remembered Billie Jean Williams. Hank Williams, young, feisty, crazy, cussing up a storm, redheaded Peg Bundy's
Hmm.
last wife. So someone remember, I don't know if you read that, but he
Yeah.
clarified it for us
We talked
firmly.
about it. Yeah,
That
we
guy
talked
in there
about it.
very firmly clarified all of Frank's and that Jet Williams was an affair he had, you
Yes.
know. But that was, thanks to that guy, I appreciate it. And I remember Billie Jean, of all the names, Billie Jean Williams. What a
Yeah.
pistol she was, man.
Billie Jean Williams, Billie Jean Horton. She married
Yeah,
Johnny
she
Horton.
married
Yeah, and
Johnny Orr.
I found a bunch of photos of her. I need to send them to you. They're exactly like you described her.
She a
Just some
redhead,
great.
right?
Yeah,
Peg
she's a
Bundy,
redhead and she's a little pistol. Yeah.
pistol, yeah. Big old hot-headed redhead, man. And boy, could she cuss up a storm. And all kind of slurs, every race, creed, N bombs, everything. She's just
Oh my
dropping
gosh.
every slur you can imagine. That woman. That was one fiery country girl, Billie
Hmm.
Jean Williams. I wonder, is she still alive?
I don't think so. I think she
Oh,
passed. I think I looked it up. I thought she'd passed away a
wonder if
while
she
ago.
ever did her book. She would have had a
Mm,
rip-roaring book. It would have been hilarious. Probably
yeah,
get
because
banned
she was
everywhere in the
married to
world.
both Hank Sr. and Johnny Horton. Those are just two things right now. No, she's alive. She's
Oh,
91. She's 91 and she lives in Bossier City, Louisiana.
yeah, I've been to her house. I don't know if that's where the house I've been to, but yeah, I went to her house and she wouldn't let me in the second time. Flew all the way to her house to start working on the book, and she's just screaming and cussing, and yeah, that
Yep.
was her young. I was amazing she still did. I wonder if she ever did a book. You have to look
Well,
that up. We'll have to do that next time. Good
sounds
old
good.
Hank Williams and Billie Jean. Billie Jean, Michael Jackson's big song was,
That's what I thought you were gonna. I thought you were gonna go somewhere with Billie Jean is not my lover.
yeah,
But it ends up
exactly.
being her.
Michael might have known her story. Who knows? He could have come up with that name because of Billie Jean Williams Horton. Johnny
Right.
Horton. What was it? New Orleans song he sung?
The battle you fought all the way, Johnny Rib, Johnny Rib.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that was my
Battle of
music.
New Orleans. Yeah.
That was my
It was a
music band
huge
song.
hit.
Yep.
Wow.
So
So she married one country guy and then another. Remind me of the Star Trek episode where the beautiful Asian women said, I was a captain's woman once and I'll be a captain's woman again. So a lot of women are, a lot of people are like that. Look at
Yeah.
Lisa Marie. Her her father was the greatest king of rock and roll, and she married the king of pop,
Oh
Michael
yeah, yeah,
Jackson. What a
yeah. That's
You're in
incredible.
that circle and you stay. And Desiree was with Julio Iglesias's doctor. It was fate. Even though she was the scorned, illegitimate daughter, she was still in the music, very top of the musical
Music
circle.
royalty. Yes, yeah.
Because I don't know if people know how big Julio Iglesias was in his time. And
Huge.
Enrique,
He was the biggest star for several years. He was
yeah, in
worldwide
the whole
famous.
world. And he was a worldwide star and sang in many different languages, Julio. And she
To
traveled with,
all the girls I've loved before,
yeah, with
who
Willie
traveled in
Nelson.
and out my door.
Yeah,
Yes.
him and Willie Nelson. Wow, we
Yep.
can go on forever. So
Okay.
you
Hey,
can, you
we
can
we
shut
have
me
good
up
conversation.
anytime.
Well, I think I'm gonna close with this. You were right that Billie Jean Horton had legal cases for versus the Hank Williams estate, but it had to do with copyrights and MGM stuff like that. So you were right. You were just thinking it had to do with a child, and but she had lawsuits going against MGM and his estate because it portrayed her in a negative light. That's
Yeah,
what the lawsuits
she
were.
was the young second wife that everybody hated. Much
Well, yeah, Hank
younger.
Hank died. Hank died under that marriage. So
Yeah,
that's why you're going to get hate on her because he died. He drank so much that he was unhappy with her supposedly.
yeah, you know.
Um,
I wish I'd have done her book, man. I don't know why she threw her temper tantrum when I showed up. And we have been,
well,
I was reliving the story with Lucy. I was talking to her on the phone all the time and then went to see her and she wouldn't let me in. Come on, Billie Jean. I flew all the way to wherever she was at the time and then she wouldn't let me in. Freaking Billie Jean.
she's still alive. She's in an assisted living facility in
Yeah,
Shreveport with her
probably
daughter.
causing all kind of trouble there.
Probably.
I bet she's causing all kind of trouble. Feisty to the end, redheads.
Well,
Feisty to the end.
we will leave on that note. It's
Yeah,
great having the conversation with you again, and I wasn't expecting to have one this soon. I'm glad we did. I was just thinking they want it. The viewers want
yeah.
it, so let's give it to them.
Well, let's do it next week.
All right, sounds good.
Here. This is fun. This has been fun. It's bringing back so many memories. I mean, when was the last time I thought of riding horses in the fifth grade with my girlfriend Frances?
There
You
you
know,
go.
I got that memory back, and I couldn't tell you where we got the horses, where they came from, but I was on a horse, and she was a lot better than me. And that,
She was
you know. All
that's
right,
funny.
we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Same here.